Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Salesforce Ben webinar, this time with revVana, covering forecasting revenue models in Salesforce. As always, whilst we're getting started, do let us know where you are tuning in from today. It's always great to see how global our audience is. You can pop a comment in the LinkedIn section. So for today's session, we're going to be exploring how you can elevate your revenue forecasting processes in Salesforce across different models, whether you're working with consumption-based, project-based, or pipeline models. We'll be diving deep into how Sales Cloud, Data Cloud, and Revenue Cloud integrate seamlessly to improve your forecasting accuracy. We are thrilled to have Greg Lewis, who is president and co-founder at revVana. Also, Kaush Ruparel, who is CPTO and co-founder at revVana, and Lizzie Parisi, who is senior product manager for Sales Cloud at Salesforce. They'll be leading on today's session, so you are in very capable hands. I'll be back for the Q&A session at the end, but do feel free to submit your questions throughout, and we'll get around to as many of them as possible. But for now, I will be handing over to our speakers to get started.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having us. We're going to jump through the agenda really quick. We're going to have a quick presentation followed by a demo. We're going to be talking a little bit about the state of the nation of forecasting today, changes we've seen in the role of RevOps over the last few years, and traditional and more complex forecasting methods that we're seeing in the field. Also, near the middle of the presentation, Lizzie from Salesforce is going to give a presentation on the new pipeline forecasting and consumption-based forecasting from Salesforce. So be sure to stick around for that. So let's talk a little bit about forecasting as it pertains to Salesforce today. A lot of us think of forecasting in the Salesforce world as pipeline forecasting, which may be done with standard reporting, traditional Salesforce collaborative forecasting, the recent or last few years revenue intelligence product that Lizzie was product manager on, CRMA, and other techniques. And then companies often have their own very specific ways they forecast pipeline as well. And of course, there's other vendor AI forecasting tools out there. We're not going to name those right now, but there's a variety of different applications in that space. We're going to talk today also about that conversion of those pipeline forecasts to revenue forecasts and operational forecasts for the rest of the organization. From what we're seeing in the market, a lot of that, some of you are attempting to use or do use Salesforce product schedules, but more common than not, we see Excel and Google Sheets in the mix to derive longer-term revenue, operational, and demand forecasts from your data. As far as revenue operations goes, the role has really changed. A lot of people talk about the difference of sales operations and revenue operations. I'd say 4 years ago, there wasn't much of a difference. It was a change in title is what we saw happening. But now, obviously with Salesforce as a platform, we're seeing revenue coming in all over the application, whether that's CPQ billing, the quote to cash stream, or whether it's exciting products like Lizzie's going to show you running on Data Cloud or the industry clouds. Revenue is definitely coming onto the Salesforce platform in the form of more than just pipeline. There's also a change in that RevOps role. In reporting structure in particular, we're seeing RevOps reporting still to the CRO, Office of Sales, but oftentimes RevOps having dual accountability to both COOs and CFOs. So just a little bit of a difference and change we've seen in the market. So challenges with the common pipeline forecasting on the sales side on the left and finance operations, the rest of the organization on the right with their ERP, demand planning, FP&A, and XP&A applications. The big challenge is there are often hundreds, if not thousands, of spreadsheets that sit in between. And if you think about the connection between sales and the rest of the enterprise, it's probably one of the most crucial things, as we all know, for top-line revenue growth. And having spreadsheets manage that function when everything else in the world is automated can be a challenge for a lot of organizations. And why is that a challenge? For starters, it's untimely. At revVana, we're an app exchange product that runs on Salesforce. So all we talk about is forecasting with our customers, and they're all Salesforce customers and prospects. Untimely as in pipeline reviews may happen, obviously, multiple times a month, weekly, monthly with teams. Revenue forecasting, the real revenue over time forecasting, we see being cast by sales ops teams and rev ops teams, or sometimes finance, on a very infrequent basis. Sometimes as infrequent as once a quarter. Why is this a problem? If you look at the process, a lot of us are process software people. Process often is extract pipeline from Salesforce, gather a bunch of other account level forecasts from spreadsheets, hundreds or thousands around the enterprise, and then take 2 or 3 weeks to put them all together. And one of our prospects actually said to present to the board of directors and the key departmental leads at the company and the CEO. So this results in inaccurate, incomplete forecasts when forecasting is already hard enough to do. And we're going to talk about methods and ways to tighten that process up today. So let's talk real quickly on common layers in the revenue forecasting process. New business coming from pipeline is where a lot of us start. And then the revenue schedules or other metrics coming out of that pipeline is one layer, as we see. Oftentimes in a lot of industries, if you have manufacturers or life sciences companies, you may have up to 80% of their revenue is really account level run rate type business. Or SaaS and infrastructure as a service companies and their consumption forecasts that may be tracked at the account product family level, and so on. And then down the revenue stream, forecasts from contracts and other custom objects, whether that be fulfillment objects, contract objects, or custom operational delivery objects that Salesforce customers have. Forecasts can really be at any level. And then there is a need too, with the revenue forecast extending, the opportunity to forecast demand and other metrics is there as well. And this is all stuff that we've seen RevOps and SalesOps doing, usually the bottom 3 bullets, and then putting them all together in spreadsheets. So real quick intro on revVana, and we're going to get on with the rest of the presentation. revVana is an app exchange product. We work natively with any Salesforce applications and objects. It can be configured to automate the creation and maintenance of forecast data from anything on platform, and we work off platform. We work with Data Cloud. We work with Lizzie's products she's showing here today as well, complement those products, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Industries that we see a need for automating the forecasting process, usage-based SaaS or infrastructure as a service organizations that are forecasting consumption. Why? Because it's hard. That consumption may show up in CPQ or in Salesforce as one unit of an API at this price and perhaps these price tiers, but how do you forecast that without knowing the usage of similar customers or knowing the usage of the customer you're selling to? Media, high-tech manufacturing, companies that have a combination of business and digital services or product and digital services, professional services, life sciences, just to name a few, represent our customers and more complex Salesforce forecasting we're seeing in the market. And let's talk really briefly about AI and its role in forecasting. And we've been on this topic since the inception of revVana and are in some pilots and doing quite a bit of R&D around a few different models. For starters, there's AI-driven accuracy. So using machine learning, using Einstein on the Data Cloud platform, using AI to indicate better routes for forecast accuracy, revenue realization, and yield. The next level we see in AI is the dynamic adjustment of forecasts, which is kind of taking it to the next level, obviously reducing the need for humans to go in and maintain thousands of lines of data. We're also seeing quite a bit of bring your own model. If you're part of a infrastructure as a service type company, your company was probably driven from the ground up on usage-based consumption models. And those analytics and those things around those models are near and dear to your companies. So at our customers, and we're seeing quite a bit on the market, companies have their own AI models that can be ingested by a lot of these different forecasting techniques we're talking about today. And then ultimately, the holy grail is the predictive capabilities to actually predict forecast scenarios, not necessarily as the forecast, but as a reference point to indicate seasonality, indicate customer trends, and other things going on in the revenue forecast. So with that, I'm going to pause and turn it over to Lizzie to talk a little bit about some new and exciting things available now and shortly with Salesforce. So Lizzie, take it away.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg, and thanks Salesforce Ben as well. So for those of you who maybe didn't get a chance to tune in at Dreamforce, we had some exciting announcements when it comes to Sales Cloud's native forecasting capabilities. Now, those of you who crossed paths with this area of product before might have heard it called collaborative forecasting. And you might wonder, where did that name come from? Really, our philosophy when it comes to driving a really confident forecast using Sales Cloud products is that we need to engage the entire team, all the way from your frontline sales reps through each layer of leadership, in a rigorous weekly process of forecast review, de-risking, and sharing of different perspectives and opinions. Now, even though we still believe in that ethos of the collaborative forecast, we did announce a big rebrand. So now our overall forecasting set of products in Sales Cloud is called Salesforce Forecasting. Within this, pipeline forecasting is that existing functionality that you were used to that really focused on the opportunity and related objects. And over the years, we've really heavily invested in making this area of product flexible to your process to do things like manage co-primes, team selling situations, complex territories or modeling out business units, and different facets or groups within your forecast that you need to focus on. Now, that being said, we heard from quite a few customers that additional flexibility was needed to address more revenue models that go beyond the close one opportunity, which is why we're so excited to have announced at Dreamforce consumption forecasting, a new framework from Salesforce Forecasting that runs on top of Data Cloud to give you that ultimate flexibility and still offer you that collaborative real-time roll-up. This is a pilot in our winter release, and it is expected to GA this spring. Safe harbor, safe harbor. So over to the next slide here. So what exactly does this look like when we're talking about bringing people together to an effective forecasting process? Well, the very first step in this new world of consumption forecasting is to connect to data from anywhere using Data Cloud. And this is really where I see that revVana can help customers and complement the use of consumption forecasting as it starts to come available in the spring. revVana is the leading solution when it comes to that automation of your forecast data and getting it in that right structure. Of course, you can use revVana on its own, but it can also be a way to supercharge how you get that data into Data Cloud, structured out in the way that you run your process, and then use consumption forecasting as that acceleration layer for these alignments, these disagreements, as you build that bottom-up roll-up to your senior leadership. So as we get that data into Data Cloud from here in consumption forecasting, this is where people adjust. So every single person in your sales team has the freedom to disagree and express their own opinion about where this revenue is going. Because of that, you get this single source of truth for how people are interpreting different risks in the business, and it allows you to drive this process to bring your team together and align. Next slide, please. So where are we going with this? As consumption forecasting comes to market in the spring release, we're going to see this flexible interface where you can track things like your actual and expected revenue, as well as any predictions that you've built on top of the Einstein platform in Data Cloud. So really, you've got this interface where you can not just get your forecast, but you also have the ability to bring in customized analytics on top of your consumption data to really fuel that information that you need to align the team on a good forecast that's based on data in the structure that makes sense to you, and that is also driving, based on human judgment, a better understanding of the forecast. Now, one of the things that I think is so exciting is revVana has partnered early with consumption forecasting and with the Sales Cloud team to build a point of view of how revVana and consumption forecasting can work together. And so now I'd love to hand off to Kaush, who's going to take us through a demo of that early vision from revVana.
You're on mute, Kosh. You're still on mute, Kosh. We can't hear you.
Oh, still no luck.
Have some audio issues.
This is why it's so important to bring your team together to talk about revenue, right? Everyone's voice counts, Greg.
Okay, we'll give Kosh a second to come back on. I think he was having some audio problems.
Maybe this would be a good time, Greg, for us to take any questions that have come in.
Yeah, that would be great, for sure. We'll
Yeah.
go ahead and do that ahead of schedule.
Are you able to hear me now?
He's back.
Oh,
All right.
we got him. Okay.
I am so sorry about that.
No problem.
All right. So I'll jump straight into the demo. What you can see on the screen is an opportunity. So as Greg mentioned, revVana is an app exchange company, and we run natively in your Salesforce org. And we have an automation engine that runs in the background, and it monitors all your opportunities based on the criteria that has been configured. When an opportunity meets a certain criteria, revVana automatically generates a revenue schedule based on the patterns and the configurations that have been set in that org. revVana can attach to any object, including quote lines. But in this demonstration, I'm going to just stick to opportunity and opportunity product. So here's an opportunity that's in a certain stage. It has 3 different products, and as of right now, it doesn't have any plan associated with it. And as it is configured here, when the opportunity moves to a next advanced stage, behind the scene, revVana will come into action. It will evaluate this opportunity against a set rules of criteria as well as patterns. And within a few moments, it will generate a plan. So let's take a quick look at this plan. So for every product in that opportunity, it analyzed the type of family, and this is again configurable on what attributes you want to pick a pattern. It could be tightly coupled on a product, or it could be loosely based on product family, or some other combination of, for example, account segments. Like for enterprise, use a certain type of ramp, but for SMB, just divide equally. So based on that, it took the opportunity product amount, the dates associated with either the product or opportunity close date, again configurable, and it generates a revenue schedule. Now I'll jump into and explain the details, but in order to show you more functionality, I will go ahead and add a new product to this opportunity. So it's not just one-time creation of the schedule, but it is constantly monitoring those opportunities. So as change happen, it's going to pick those up. So a lot of companies for consumption product, since the actual usages may not be known, they just enter a dummy value for that particular product. And this is just to show that everything doesn't have to be at the same time. I'll pick a date that is different from the other product. And once this is saved, revVana will again swing into action, and it will start processing it. But while it's processing, I can talk a little bit about all the different patterns that are configured in this org. So product 1 is a one-time product where the entire opportunity product amount got allocated to the month of November. Product 14 is kind of like a recurring pattern, but it's like once a quarter. So we support different patterns like that. In this case, it gets assigned to end of quarter. And you may have noticed my screen just refreshed. So it brought in that new product, and it noticed that it starts in December. And I had entered 0.1 as the value, but behind the scene, we have analyzed the historical data, and we figured out that for this particular account or similar accounts, the consumption amount is in the range of 36,000. So it picked that, and then it equally um, applied the monthly weight, or how the product in the past has been distributed over the months, and it intelligently created that schedule for you. And again, it could be based on different patterns and different input parameters that you put. In this example, it's using the monthly distribution, percentage of total weighted, as well as a seasonal index. Now, the question could be, where did this come from? So this comes from another input that revVana can maintain. In this example, revVana has calculated a monthly profile from the historical actual revenue by account, and you see four different metrics that it has calculated. This would be used as an input, but this can be at any level. It doesn't have to be at account level. It could be at uh, account and product family level, account and product level, or a higher dimensionality like account industry and product family. Where that becomes important is, let's say you have a brand new account and you don't have any history to go by in terms of how are you going to predict the consumption or any other pattern for that particular new account, or you may be launching a new product and you don't necessarily have a history to go by. Having said that, accounts share behavior and characteristics with other accounts in the size category or segment or industry. So we have some information in the past that we can derive. So instead of like either not forecasting for new account or taking a very broad stroke and just putting everything, all the revenue in certain months, divide equally, something like that, we could actually adopt patterns from similarly behaving accounts or industries and use that to generate the forecast. And we can do multiple of this. It's not just one. You could have ramp coming in, you could have growth factors being applied in sequence. We can also adopt inputs that could come from other teams like finance or demand planning that have been doing these kind of analysis, so we can take those into account. So once we do this, once you have the plan that is generated at the opportunity level, this in itself can be fed into the Salesforce consumption forecasting tool. And this would work for certain industry that just does forecasting for new business. However, there are other industries where the total revenue comes from new business, which is tracked in opportunity and CPQ, but they also have business on account. Some companies call it run rate, some companies just call it existing business. This is the stream of revenue that is not tracked by opportunities. So in that case, the final revenue would be a combination of all those. So where revVana can help is, this is just one scenario we call pipeline revenue, but you can configure multiple scenarios and then roll them up at an account by account level or a book of business level, where a rep managing multiple accounts can see all their numbers rolled up at that level. And as I was mentioning, we could support multiple scenarios. In this example, you would see a sales team's call, you see the total revenue forecast, AI model one predicted amount, model two, and actual amount. So the idea here is that the rep and the team, when they are making their adjustment, they have a plethora of information available at their hands, and they can make a more informed decision. One model may perform better for a certain account or a certain set of products versus another model may perform better. So as time goes by, the system can also be trained to pick a specific model for a specific account as we know more about the accuracy of those forecasts. So talking about where this came from, so we have let's talk about one by one. So the AI model forecast can come from some of the homegrown generative models that we have, which look at your historical actuals and generate a forecast by account or at a granular level by account and product. But you can bring your own model. Like if your teams have already built a capability, or you could use Salesforce Einstein to generate the prediction. And if you want to bring it in here, you could bring it in here. And if you notice, on the month of October, we have the values predicted by all these models and the month of September, which was the last month, we also have the actual. So this kind of gives your team an ability to look at these different forecasts and arrive at their number at their own intuition. And when it comes to total revenue forecast, this is where I was mentioning that the forecast could be a combination of your new business as well as run rate or existing business. So when I filter by account A, you can see at the bottom where we have laid out the forecast by opportunities, open as well as close. And then there is also a number coming from the run rate that has been predetermined using historical data for that particular month. When you all add it all up, that becomes your total revVana forecast. And where this approach excels is if you are just doing an AI model that generates a forecast based on historical actuals, you may miss out on some signals that is living in your opportunity. You may have an open opportunity that is going to significantly increase the consumption for a product for an account. But if you have just relied on your historical actuals, your model will miss that number. So we believe that generating these forecasts from bottom up by combining different scenarios into a total number is a far superior approach. So having said that, since we generate this data at that bottom up level, you can do a lot of different analysis because every opportunity in this case and the product has its own revenue schedule. So you can slice and dice your numbers from different angles. And as you work with your team, this kind of becomes a valuable input for you to make a more informed forecast. So alternatively, if you want to do a full-on new plus existing business forecast, you could generate this plan and we could then feed this into the consumption forecasting instead of just the new business. So with that said, I'll quickly jump into how the data from revVana moves into the consumption data model. So essentially, since all the data lives in a data cloud, we can push the information from revVana plans into the consumption forecasting data model. Once that is done, this is how it appears. And again, this is a view from a sales rep where they can look at it by account, and it could be a granular forecast where line by line or opportunity by opportunity, that information can be feeded to the forecasting. And as you see here, we could see the expected revenue information. We could also do predicted if it's configured that way. But the idea being that instead of starting with a blank forecast, you now have a bottoms up rolled up number in this UI. And this is the sales rep view. Let me quickly show you a view from an executive point of view where the numbers roll up their hierarchy. So this is a VP of sales view, and in this view, you can see that all the numbers from revVana's opportunity level forecast rolled up to accounts, and then it rolled up to the individual users. And at this point, this is where what Lizzie was saying, they could collaboratively discuss this on a weekly basis and make changes and adjustments to generate a more realistic forecast. It's configured. It could automatically take all the new changes that have happened in the week and push that information here. So this could be a real living forecast, which automatically adapts to the changes that are happening, opportunities closing, new opportunities coming into play, and all that is accounted, saving the team a lot of data munging and other exercises to make it more up to date. So with that, I will end this demo. Lizzie, if you want to add anything to this, feel free to do that. But otherwise, back to you, Greg.
No, just wanted to say that was so great. And I love that you guys blazed a trail here to define how you could use consumption forecasting on top of revVana and bring some of that collaboration on top of the excellent, types of data models that you guys are building out and supporting and the flexibility that's inherent to your solution. So thank you so much for putting that together. Over to you, Greg.
The team, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and thanks for joining us, Lizzie. It's exciting to to go through all these new forecasting developments. Why is forecasting important? Is a question we often get from some of our Salesforce team members at our customers or at prospects. If you ask a CEO, they will definitely have a reason why it's important. But the ability to forecast accurately, both your new business, your consumption, and everything in between, has a lot of benefits. One is to identify gaps in revenue yield. Consumption models are based on pricing, and that pricing has different tiers. To maximize revenue yield, you need to know where you're headed. Manufacturing has had revenue yield issues for years, and we're going to see those more and more in consumption SaaS and consumption infrastructure as a service. Improving forecast accuracy. It's a bummer when a team or a company misses a forecast if economic times are touchy or there's some other external factors. But to also be challenged with your own internal process is completely not necessary in this day and age. So we like to get all of our ducks in a row the best we can to improve forecast accuracy. And then shifting to dynamic forecasting gives you better reaction time for a business. If what you're going to present to the executive team on a quarterly board meeting can be also bottom up numbers gone through by the team on a daily and weekly basis, there's obvious benefits to fixing the business and getting to where we want to go, and then identifying growth opportunities and assessing your price strategies. So thank you all for taking part today. We wanted to wrap this one up relatively quickly. If you want to find out more about revVana or just talk about forecasting in general, Salesforce Ben has posted a link to schedule some time with us, or feel free to reach out to myself or Kosh on LinkedIn or with our emails here. And Lizzie, if they want to hear more about pipeline forecasting and upcoming consumption forecasting, who should they turn to?
Well, I feel like you might be able to guess my answer. You should reach out to your account executive at Salesforce, and they'll have the latest information about what's coming in Sales Cloud. They'll be able to get all of the right materials over to you and information about this pilot, as well as the upcoming GA. And they're also the window to folks like me on the product team who can tell you more about our roadmap in forecasting and beyond.
And if some of you are thinking, boy, Lizzie, that consumption forecasting looks really cool, but we have a bunch of custom stuff, it's not going to work with that. That's where revVana can help. We work with custom objects and all kinds of assets that customers have already built and try to leverage those in the forecasting process. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Q&A to the Salesforce Ben team here.
Amazing. Thank you all. I'll just pull down the slides here. And yeah, we'll move into Q&A now. So if anyone has any questions, do pop them in the chat and we'll cover as many as we can over the next couple of minutes. We had a few come in. So this one is, what kind of patterns do you generate, and can finance provide their growth factors or ramps?
Yeah. So I can take that one. So essentially, out of the box, you have your basic calculated patterns. Could be like divide equally, or things like once a quarter, once 6 months, once a year kind of thing, or one time. Your contracts or your schedules don't have to be an annual one. If you're running your business for, let's say, with contracts for 3 years, revVana can generate 36 schedules. If you want to do this planning quarterly instead of monthly, we could generate a schedule that has a number per quarter. So we can account for a lot of those patterns out of the box. Some customers have RAMs, and those RAMs could be static RAMs, which are hard-coded by region, or certain attributes. You can define that directly in revVana UI, or you can import it from, let's say, a CSV into the system. Same thing applies for things like growth factors. And it can be like tightly coupled to a specific opportunity level attribute, or it could be loosely coupled by product families. You could have certain patterns directly associated with a product family. That way, anytime any product in that family is added to an opportunity, that specific pattern would be applied. Or it could be dynamically calculated based on account size A, apply pattern 1, account size B, apply pattern 2. So we could do that. In addition to that, we have abilities to derive certain patterns out of your actuals. And with machine learning and external processing, we could extend that functionality as needed.
Perfect, thank you. Another one here. How long does it take to implement revVana?
I'll take that one.
I can take that one too. So it depends on what is our source and what is the complexity of the calculations you are doing. So if it's a simple opportunity product based forecasting, we can stand up revVana in a couple of weeks. But I mentioned earlier that it doesn't have to be just based on opportunity and product. It could be any object. So we have customers that have workflows where once the opportunity closes, the sales team hands over the customer to an implementation team, which has to kind of onboard the customer, and then they start seeing the revenue from that. So that onboarding team has their own forecast, and they have custom objects in Salesforce for implementation tasks. So we can attach to those implementation tasks in addition to the opportunities and create implementation teams forecasts. And their workflow oftentimes is that while an opportunity is open, use the sales team's forecast as your final forecast for that opportunity. But once the sales team hands it over to implementation team task, discard the sales forecast and now start using the implementation team's forecast. So we could do like these kind of cascading scenarios as well. So when you have that kind of situation, it could be somewhere around 4 to 6 weeks. And again, if there are other scenarios like you want to do your run rate of forecast, which would rely on how do you generate that. If it requires a workflow to do that, so that will add on time to it. But typical use cases with opportunity and opportunity product, we can stand it up fairly quickly in a matter of weeks.
Awesome.
Amazing, thank you. Any other questions? Fab. Well, if there are no further questions, then I am happy to wrap up the session now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Kosh. And thank you, Lizzie, for taking the time to speak to us today about what it is that you do and a bit more about forecasting revenue models in Salesforce as well. And thank you to everyone in the audience for tuning in today. I hope that you found this session valuable. If you would like to find out more about revVana, do feel free to book in a call with their team. The link has been shared in the chat. So yeah, feel free to pop some time in with them. Any last thoughts before we close?
That's good. Thank you for hosting us today.
No worries.
Reach out to us if you want to see a custom demo. We also do custom POCs to show this with your own data. So reach out to us.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, folks.
Bye.